we are on and we're live and we got to get going because we have a lot to do today. And I think the very first thing that we're going to do today is we are going to go over the other questions that we had from the other day. All right. So we've got a story today. I fixed my hair right here, I think. No, not. So we had a story, which was a very long story. So we had the story of Jacob's dream, if you remember, right? So Jacob's dream, and we'll have questions with that. So I won't review that with you right now. And then after that, we had the story of Joseph. And if you remember, that was from the Children's Illustrated Bible, right? That story of Joseph. And that story of Joseph was kind of a long story. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go look at Jacob's ladder questions. Then we're going to kind of take a look at some of the pictures that we had for Joseph to do a little review of Joseph. Let's just see over here. We've got some Esau Jacob stories here. Here we go. In this Bible as well. So here's a different picture of Jacob's ladder there, right? So Jacob's dream over here. No, I always get it wrong. This side over here, right? So there you go. You can see it. So that hopefully gives you just a little reminder of what we were talking about, because that was a while ago for Jacob's dream. Then we'll get to Joseph, and then we'll get to Moses. Moses is a kind of a long story as well, but we're going to read Moses from the Reader's Digest Bible for Children. It's a long story, but it's longer in the other one. So we're going to read it right from here. But because it's a long story, we want to get to our other questions. And don't you worry that sometimes when we get to questions that are from a story that we read kind of a while ago, I bet it wasn't even last week. I bet it was the week before, or maybe it was Tuesday. Maybe it was a week ago. So it's kind of hard to remember those things, I realize, but that is a great job for your memory. What is a great job for your memory? Did you hear that? What's a great job? I didn't hear what she said. What's a great job for your memory is to review. So even though we haven't talked about Jacob's dream or Jacob's ladder in about a week, maybe even longer than that, we will remember it better because we're coming back to it later. It's one of the same ideas when they tell you to study not all at once the night before a test, but to study on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. That's what I'm hoping that you're doing on our phonics day. That's why we only have one phonics day, because there is a lot for you to do from the one phonics day. We're here for phonics every single Wednesday. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our questions. All right, so we always have a tip, and our tip is from "101 Ways to Improve Your Grammar Skills." This is a Scholastic book that was put out by Scholastic. So we are only on tip number 4, but who cares? So what? There's 101 tips over here, so we're just at the very beginning, and I'm going to have to find another book after 101 anyway, so it's kind of nice. Oh, by the way here, chapter 1 is on why bother with grammar. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the introduction. Chapter 1 is on general grammar tips. So we're in general grammar tips, right? We already did the introduction, why bother with grammar. And I don't know why I'm flipping through this, since we already have tip number 4, do a lot of reading. So, reading is one of the very best ways to expose yourself to correct grammar. The more you read, the more familiar you will become with good English usage, and your grammar will improve. Best of all, this knowledge will be automatic. Things will simply sound right or wrong to you. You might not know exactly why something is right or wrong, but that doesn't really matter. You will know. That is so true. That is so true. I didn't read through that until just now. I just put the tip up there last night. But that is so true. Your learning of grammar becomes automatic when you read a lot. Why? Because just like they said, things sound right or things sound wrong. Do you hear what I'm saying? Right? So you'll hear somebody, and as a teacher, I do this. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I used to do it a lot more. And as a teacher, you'll hear somebody say, I did good. No, I did well. And I do that. How are you? I'm good. No, it's not. That's not grammatically correct. I'm well. And you begin to notice it. And I still say, when people say, how are you? I still say, I'm good. I just do. It seems to me to be casual. But it's not grammatically correct. And every time I hear myself say, I'm good, and especially if I hear the other person say, I'm doing well, it registers in my mind that, Dr. Annette, is not grammatically correct to say I'm good. Grammatically correct is to say I am well. And you'll catch those things automatically. And like I started to say, as a teacher, I'll hear somebody do that and I'll correct them, right? I automatically do, right? I automatically correct their English. And you'll start doing that in your own mind. But how do you get to know it? You get to know it by reading, doing a lot of reading. Here's an important thing about that reading tip there. Why can't you just do listening? Why can't you just listen to other people and learn what is grammatically correct and what is not grammatically correct? Why can't you just listen to others and then know what is grammatically correct and what is not? Think about that for just a second. Why do you think that we just can't listen to others in order to know what is grammatically correct? Because maybe they don't have really great grammar. That's the reason why. Maybe their grammar is really bad. And then what? Then what? Then you're listening and learning automatically bad grammar. My parents didn't have a great education. Neither one of them went to college, and my dad actually didn't finish high school. And so their grammar wasn't perfect. It was pretty good, right? They spoke pretty well, but it wasn't perfect. And I know I can catch myself saying things that I learned as a kid that I thought was correct. Like lackadaisical. It's not lackadaisical. It's not lax, even though it is lax. You call it lax. It's not lax. It's lackadaisical. But I'll say it wrong because I learned it wrong as a kid. That's automatic. That was automatic. So sometimes you could learn things automatically wrong, and sometimes you could learn things automatically right. You learn things automatically right when you do a lot of reading, because people can't write books and have poor grammar. Of course it makes sense. All right, we're going to go backwards a little bit with this, with the slides, in order to get all the questions that we need for Jacob's dream. Okay, so who is Jacob? And if you remember, who was Jacob? Jacob was the twin brother, because they were born at the same time, of Esau. He was the younger brother of Esau, right? What did Jacob do to his brother? Jacob did a lot of things to his brother, if you remember. Jacob, what did he do to his brother? Well, remember, Jacob was a tricky brother, right? He used to trick Esau all the time. But Esau was kind of willing, if you remember, right? So first of all, Jacob tricked Esau, his brother, out of his blessing. Now, this was a really big deal for the Israelites. This was a really big deal for the Jewish people, because the oldest son got the blessing for the birthright. They got the birthright, which meant they got all of the father's goods. They inherited everything, and then they could disperse it among the other brothers and sisters as they wanted to. So they got the birthright, and then later they got the blessing. And this blessing was really important because the blessing was from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. From their special God, they got a special blessing. So it looks like everyone couldn't get those blessings. It was a special blessing because Esau was really mad at Jacob when Jacob took his blessing. Esau gave him his birthright. Esau gave Jacob his birthright. He said he didn't care about it. And so now you see that Jacob actually gets the blessing. Jacob cares about it. And Jacob actually fights for that blessing. So God knows that Jacob cares about that birthright. And God knows that Jacob cares about that blessing. Okay, let's go on. It's such a short story. We made it kind of long. What was Jacob's brother Esau going to do to Jacob in retaliation? Retaliation here means to get back at Jacob. Jacob did something that was not very nice to Esau. What was Esau going to do in retaliation to get back at Jacob? To get back at Jacob. He was going to kill him, wasn't he? Esau was going to kill his brother Jacob for doing that. And boy, you can imagine how that would make you so mad. Let's say that your dad was going to give you all of your property and the house and the cars and everything. Let's say he was going to give you that. And then somehow your brother tricked your dad into giving it to him instead. That would probably make you really, really mad. Okay. The next question, what did Jacob dream, and what did God say to Jacob in his dream? Jacob's dream was about, there were angels going up and down the ladder, right? I think that we might have a picture of that somewhere, but there were angels that were going up and down the ladder. We have a picture of it in the book. Because the dream is called Jacob's ladder, a staircase. It was more like a staircase, but the dream is called Jacob's ladder. And so that was what the dream was about. But what was the real reason for the dream? The real reason for the dream was in order for God, there we go. In order for God to tell Jacob about the promises that he made to Abraham. And then tell Jacob that Jacob would get those promises. That the promises were given to his grandfather, Jacob's grandfather, Abraham. They were given to Abraham's son, Isaac, who was Jacob's father. And God promised that they would be given to Jacob as well. And what were those promises? Those promises were that they would get a great land. They were wandering around. Abraham left his family and where he lived. And now they were wandering around and they had no land. So God promised Abraham that his people would have land. And if you remember where Jacob laid his head in Canaan, as he was leaving, that was the land that they were promised. We're going to see how they were living in the land, but then they ended up getting out of the land and going to Egypt. We're going to see that. Coming up in Moses, we're going to talk about that. Okay. What did Jacob do after his dream? And what did Jacob call the place that he fell asleep? After Jacob's dream, Jacob ended up battling and with God. He ended up wrestling with God after his dream. He wanted his blessing. Let's see here. Let's get to the story again. I don't know why I put that. Oh, I didn't tell you what God promised. He promised that I will give to you and your children and your children's children a great land, a great blessing, large number of descendants, and a great name that everybody will remember. 4 things God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He promised them a great land. That was the land of Canaan. He promised them many descendants. We know that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had many descendants. They filled the earth. Not everybody is direct descendant, but they filled the planet. So we know that God made his promise number 2. Promise number 3 was that they would have a great blessing. In our spiritual classroom, we're talking exactly about what their great blessing really was. And it was a fantastic, they've been blessed all along because they've been persecuted. The Jews have been persecuted. All their history has been a history of persecution. Yet they are still here. And they are still teaching us by their Bible stories as well. And by the way that they lived, they're teaching us a lot. Not because they were perfect, but because they showed us some really, really good lessons. So that was promise number 3, a great blessing. And promise number 4 was a great name. A great name. And Christians have a great name. And Jewish people have a great name. And believers have a great name. And even though some people want to take away that great name, we really do have a great name. So that's what the 4 promises were about. And what did Jacob do? Jacob ended up putting up this rock there, right? And it was basically to remind him of the promises. It's kind of like an altar, but it's not, it was just a giant rock. So when he went and he walked to and from Canaan, he would see his rock and it would remind him of God's promises. And what was that called? That was called Bethel. I forgot what it was called. That is called Bethel. Okay. All right, I look at the time there. All right. What did God change Jacob's name to? I forgot to correct that. What did God change Jacob's name to? He changed it to Israel. Israel is Jacob's new name. And that is the reason why the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are called Israelites. This is a really interesting story because Jacob really was a trickster, wasn't he? He was a trickster, but he fought for his blessing and Esau gave it away. It was important to Jacob that God was behind him and he fought for it all the time, every step of the way. He said, you promised me this. If you promised me this, I'll do whatever you want me to do, but you need to make sure you come through with your promises. And he did. He called all of Jacob's people Israelites after Jacob's new name, Israel. Okay. Have you heard of that name before? Have you heard of the name Israel before? There's a land called Israel, isn't there? There's a country called Israel. And that country was given to the Jews. It was given to the Jews in 1946 so that they had a land because they were still roaming. Their land was taken away from them. They were still roaming. So, have you heard of that name before, Israel? It's a country, and it became a country in 1946. And I'll tell you something else. The United States had a lot to do with that becoming a country. They wanted to make sure, the United States wanted to make sure that the Jewish people finally had a place they can call their own. So they had Canaan. What happens? We'll find out as we move along in the stories. Okay, so those are the questions that we have for Jacob. Then the other questions that we needed to review were the questions that we had for Joseph and the 12 tribes of Israel. What I think I'm going to do is, I think that instead of going to those questions, I'm going to do all the questions for Moses and for Joseph when we finish the story of Moses. Okay? All right, so let's go and let's read the story of Moses. Let me get my glasses on so I don't have to worry about what I'm reading. Kind of like I was a minute ago. When I was reading that tip, I didn't know if I could see it very well. And I couldn't see it very well. I knew I knew I couldn't see it very well. It's just that I didn't know if I could read it very well without being able to see it very well. And I did okay, but not for our story. I need my glasses for our story. And I need my fingerprints off of my glasses for our story. And I need to put a clip in my hair. So many needs and wants. Okay. Look at the beautiful pictures that we have here. So hopefully you'll take some time to look at the beautiful picture. There we go. And while I'm reading, let's move it down a little bit. There we go. I'll move back a little bit. There we go. How about that? Then I'll move over like this a little bit. Okay. Now we've got it going on. The story of Moses. In those days, the children of Israel lived in Egypt, where they were called Hebrews. So now we've got the same people being called a number of different names. They're being called Jews, they're being called Israelites, and they're being called Hebrews. Now also notice that they are in Egypt. So after our story of Joseph, what happened to Jacob and the other 11 sons? After, they didn't have a story in here of Joseph. What happened in our story of Joseph after Joseph and his 11 brothers? What happened? His 11 brothers went to Egypt. Why? Because there was famine. So now the Jewish people have left their promised land of Canaan and they have moved to Egypt. Well, what do you mean, Dr. Annette? They moved to Egypt. You're only talking about 12 sons. What do you remember? Remember the 12 tribes of Israel? So you're only talking about 12 sons, Dr. Annette. So what exactly do you mean? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. I went completely around. There we go. All right, and so they're the 12 tribes of Israel. So Jacob's 12 sons, starting with Joseph, went to Egypt. Joseph went to Egypt first, and then his 11 brothers went there. And then what did they do? They had families, and they had children, and they settled in this area, which were the 12 tribes here. Okay? But before they did that, before the 12 tribes came out of the story of Moses, before they got those 12 tribes, those 12 sons of Jacob went to Egypt. The 11 of them went there to follow Joseph and get food. And now this happens. All right? So, in those days, the children of Israel lived in Egypt where they were called Hebrews. Sorry about that. Let's get it together, Dr. Annette. They became so numerous and powerful that the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, feared them. He commanded that they work as slaves, making bricks and building cities. But still the Hebrews grew in number. So the Pharaoh commanded that every newborn Hebrew boy be put to death by drowning in the Nile River. This is the reason why people have sometimes a hard time reading the Bible, because sometimes some people, but that's the same way it is today. There are some people who do really, really great things, and there are some people who do some really good things, and there are some people who do okay things, and there are some people who do bad things, and there are some people who do really bad things, just like in these days. But we're telling the story because this is the story of God's people, the Israelites. Okay? And it's important because they are setting the example for everybody. One woman had just given birth to a little boy. She hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she laid him in a basket and set the basket among the rushes at the river's edge. The baby's older sister hid nearby to watch over him. There's the little Moses in the little basket right there. Look at precious little baby Moses. He was 3 months old though. He wasn't probably that little infant. He was he was moving around and probably babbling. Now the Pharaoh's daughter came down the river to bathe. She saw the basket and sent a serving girl to bring it to her. The Pharaoh's daughter looked at the baby boy who was crying. She said, "He is a Hebrew child," and took pity on him. Of course she did. It was a little baby who was crying. Who wouldn't? Who has the soul of a rock that wouldn't take care of and have pity for a little infant baby crying? Or a mother. The baby's sister, who had seen all this, said to the Pharaoh's daughter, "If you like, I can find someone to nurse the baby." And she went to find her mother. So the mother nursed her own child. So Moses' real mom actually nursed him. She breastfed her own baby because Pharaoh's daughter would not have been able to do that. She didn't have the breast milk. Only mothers, when they become pregnant, get that. And since Pharaoh's daughter was not pregnant, she didn't have anything to feed the infant baby Moses. But who did? His real mother. And she was able to feed her baby. Can you imagine what a wonderful thing for God to do for that mother who sacrificed her baby so he didn't get killed, right? And he didn't get killed. So Pharaoh tried to have all the infant babies killed because why? Because the Israelites, the Hebrews, were getting so large in number. They could have taken over the entire Egypt. They could have taken over all of Egypt if they wanted to. They were so large in number. So that scared Pharaoh. So he said, let's kill the babies. But they hid Moses. And why were they successful? Because Pharaoh's daughter took care of Moses. So I'm sure if Pharaoh's daughter wanted the baby, Pharaoh's daughter got the baby, right? The baby sister who had seen all this said to Pharaoh's daughter, "If you like, I can find..." Oh, and then we already said that. So the mother nursed her own child, and when he was older, the Pharaoh's daughter took him into the palace as her son. She named him Moses, which means rescued from waters. Well, then that's a perfect name, isn't it? because Moses was rescued from waters, wasn't he? Moses grew up in the Pharaoh's palace, but one day he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew man again and again, because that's what they did to their slaves. That's what happened if the slaves didn't obey, or if or if there's an Egyptian soldier who is just mean and angry, he might do that as well, right? So, and Moses killed the Egyptian. The Pharaoh learned of it and meant to have Moses put to death, but Moses fled from Egypt into the land of Midian and became a shepherd. If you want to see this movie, watch the original movie of the 10 Commandments and you'll see the movie. And it's got beautiful pictures like this, the burning bush, and like other pictures here that we're going to see. One day, as he led his flocks through the wilderness, Moses came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There he saw flames spurting forth from a bush. And wonder of wonders, the bush burned and burned, but did not turn to ashes. So it was just on fire, but it didn't burn up. Moses went closer. From out of the bush, God spoke to him. Moses, Moses, I have heard the suffering of my people. I have heard their cries. I will deliver them from the Egyptians. Tell the Pharaoh to let the children of Israel go. I am God, and I shall be with you. So it doesn't tell you this, but the Israelites were slaves of the Egyptians for over 400 years. About 430 years, I think, ended up being, but about 400 years. Moses returned to Egypt and his people. He spoke to the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh refused to listen. Instead, he commanded that the Hebrews be made to work even harder. God told Moses to strike the Nile with his shepherd's crook, and the Nile became a river of blood. But the Pharaoh still refused to let the Hebrews go. God told Moses to raise his staff again, and Egypt was invaded by frogs, then by gnats, then by flies. But the Pharaoh still refused to let the Hebrews go. They were slaves, and he did not want to release them. Then God caused all the livestock of the Egyptians to die. God sent sickness, then hailstorms, and then locusts. Still, the Pharaoh refused. So there are some of the pictures there. Yeah, look at that. That's a great picture. There's the river turning to blood. But again, if you want to see all that on film, watch the 10 Commandments. It's an awesome movie. God told Moses to lift his hands to heaven, and then came upon the land of Egypt 3 days of darkness and night. Could you imagine the sun not rising for 3 days? Can you imagine? But the Pharaoh kept refusing, for his heart was hardened. It was hard, like a brick. You couldn't make it soft. He didn't care about what was going on. He didn't care about the Israelites. He didn't care about the gnats. He didn't care about 3 days of nighttime. He didn't care about any of it. Then God said to Moses, tonight I shall strike Egypt, and every firstborn in the land shall die, both human and animal, and the Pharaoh will let you go. Tonight, let each Hebrew family take a lamb and eat its roasted flesh. Cook it. Cook the lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They didn't want to wait for the bread to rise. So they ate the bread without yeast in it. It didn't rise to be a nice round loaf. It was flat. Kind of like a pita is what it is. Just like a pita. You will eat standing up, your sandals on your feet, and in great haste. For tonight is the Passover of the Lord. You will mark the doors of your houses with the blood of the lamb. So they killed a lamb to eat and have a feast, but they had to be ready to go because they're trying to get Pharaoh to let them go. And when Pharaoh says go, you need to be ready because Pharaoh might change his mind. So get out of there as soon as Pharaoh says you can go. But first, what you have to do is take the blood of that lamb and put it on your doorway. What an amazing little thing God is asking, right? A small thing that he's asking, but look at what it does. And that's one of the things that you'll find out about God and Jesus, is that they really don't ask for a lot of really big things for you to do. He asks for small things for you to do. Why? Because he just wants to know that you will do something because you believe that he will do good, that he will come through with his promises if you do it. It's not a big thing. God is looking to see if you will do it because you believe. Stand up. There's a lot of people and things that we can stand up for. There's a lot of problems that we see going on around this planet in your classroom, right? And it doesn't mean being a tattletale. What it means is you are supposed to learn to do the right thing. What is the right thing to do? Tattling isn't always the right thing, but sometimes we do have to tell adults when there's danger. So you have to learn to think about how to do the right thing. Just like Moses had to learn. Moses was scared. And it tells us that in the Bible. He did not want to do this. And it tells us that very clearly in the Bible. Just like a lot of times we don't want to do the right thing. That's the reason why God has these stories for us. He has these stories for us so that he shows us that other people had to struggle with the same things. Just like if God came to you and said, you need to go save the children that are living in Detroit. You'd be like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. How am I supposed to do that? Save all the poor children living in Detroit without any parents. How am I supposed to do that? I don't even know. Government can't even do that. How am I supposed to do that? That's how Moses probably felt. That's exactly it. And that's why we have those stories. So they marked the blood of the lamb on their house, right? So when they went to have that feast with the lamb, they took that blood and they put it on the doorpost. When I see this mark, I will pass over you, and your houses will be spared from the suffering that will fall on the land of Egypt. You will remember this night, and you and your children and your children's children will celebrate it forever. Do we celebrate Passover forever? The Jewish people do. And Christians do too. Not in the same way. Not exactly in the same way. But we do celebrate Passover. We do know Passover is important. What the Christians celebrate is Easter, the resurrection. That's what they celebrate, right? But we still need to remember Passover. Okay, so why is it called Passover? Because, well, we'll find out. We'll find out. We're going to find out. We're going to finish this story. Our classroom is all done for the day. We're going to come back here and finish the story on Thursday. Why? Because on Wednesdays, we have our day of phonics. So join us for our day of phonics on Wednesday. Don't forget our tip today from our 101 ways to improve your grammar. And that is read a lot. Reading improves your grammar automatically because you begin to hear things sound right or they don't sound right. This is Dr. Annette. Thank you for joining me in our early bird classroom. Sorry I got in here a little bit late, but that's what happens. Sometimes we have a last minute emergency. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock for